Good morning, everyone. So today we're going to be talking about really one of my favorite things to talk about. It's one of the more important movement concepts that I find that people struggle with, and that is the combination of thoracic extension with scapular mobility, and very specifically the idea of packed shoulders, the downward rotation of the shoulders where we move them down into our hip pockets. It's something I cue into our movements quite often. I want to give a little visual reference and talk about why this is so important. Scapular mobility, the ability to downwardly rotate the scapula, is how we access our core, for our arms to access our core. And it is not just that downward rotation of the scapula, it's also the combination of upward movement of the thoracic, getting thoracic extension. I'm going to show a little bit of a video here. And with this, we're looking at different movements of the shoulder, of the scapula. This is scapular abduction and scapular abduction, where the scapula moves towards the spine, away from the spine. We got elevation and depression. This is upward rotation, and the more important one I want to look at is downward rotation. So I'm going to back that one up. This downward rotation of the scapula is the movement that I want to really isolate and work on. Now, the issue with this particular movement is that in the image, you're not seeing the spine move, you're just seeing the scapula move. If we are stuck in thoracic flexion, which most people are, it creates this rounded shoulders, head extended position. This position of the shoulder blade, that shoulder blade is in an upward rotated position. That was that first part of that, scapular upward rotation. Downward rotation is moving down and back. And if you look at my spine as I move into upward rotation, into downward rotation, you'll see that I'm also getting movement of the thoracic spine. My thoracic is going into flexion and then moving into extension. And if I lack the ability to extend for thoracic extension, I'm not going to get the same amount of scapular downward rotation. And if I can't get that last little bit of downward rotation, I'm not going to be able to access as much of my core, which is going to be important for lifting, carrying, throwing, pulling, pushing. Any movement of the shoulder, it means that instead of being able to access the deeper, bigger muscles of the core, we get a lot more focus on the smaller muscles at the shoulder. This is what I consider like we're overusing the gun. We're not accessing that deeper core foundation. And we put a lot more stress on our rotator cuff muscles. So this is why a lot of people get rotator cuff injuries, is they lack the ability to extend the spine, access the core, which makes them a lot stronger, and they put a lot more stress on the smaller muscles at the further away from the core. So that's what we're going to be working on in today's session, is kind of just at a very base level, getting that thoracic extension and connecting it into that downward rotation of the scapula. So the thoracic is the section of the thoracic spine. It is where all your ribs attach. T1 through T12, you have 12 thoracic vertebrae, you have 12 ribs that attach to the thorax. The sternum will be a part of that because your ribs articulate with the sternum, but it's not sternum specifically. So we got head, cervical spine is going to be from the base of the skull to that T12 where that first rib articulates. So that's going to be C7 about right there. This is T1 all the way down to that 12th floating rib. That's going to be T12. Then you have your lumbar spine. That is the bottom 5 vertebrae. Then you have your sacrum, and there's your vestigial tail floating around right there. So what happens for most people is we sit in front of in our cars, we sit in front of computers, and when we sit, our joints start to stack because our bodies are incredibly efficient. To stay unstacked means that our muscles have to constantly work on reducing sway so that we don't fall over. That's energy taxing. So what happens is we stack all of our joints. We get into a state of compression where the body just kind of softens down, stacks all those joints. And now I'm here and I can spend hours and hours in this position with very little effort so I can focus on my work. But what happens is those 12 vertebrae, they're in flexion and they kind of get stuck. And then when we get up, we don't move in ways in which exercises thoracic extension, so we lose access neurologically to it. And these 12 vertebrae are going to be stuck in a flexed position. And then we go out and we start moving and doing things, and we're doing all this movement from the shoulders, but we're not actually getting the movement in the spine. A problem comes in when we try to move because they're stuck, instead of getting that segmental, one vertebrae at a time going into extension, we tend to get extension at the bottom of the thoracic, that T12 junction, which is why we get what we call rib flare, where the rib sticks out. Everything here is still hunched, but we're moving, and all we get is that major extension at the T12 L1 junction. And so you get massive extension at one place instead of segmental extension at each vertebrae through. So when I talk about, when we're doing the staff, which we're going to do in a little bit, I'm going to talk, part of the reason I work on scoops first is because I want to feel that rib pinned down, core engaged, as I start to get movement into the shoulders, so that I'm trying to get that movement to come from the thoracic and not just from that T12 L1. We're going to start in standing position, working on our bowls of soup. Starting on arms coming out to the sides, spreading the hand wide, elbows fully and actively extended, and spiraling the palms up towards the ceiling. Really spiraling as far up and out as you can. As we get that spiraling out, that should kind of help naturally open up the chest a little bit. We're going to work one hand at a time. So we're going to take that one right palm, keeping those fingers spread, and we're spiraling them in. And I want to see how far can I inwardly spiral, and then externally spiral, and then same thing to the other side. And as we're going back and forth, I want to note, how does it feel as that ball of the humerus is spinning around in that socket? On the right side compared to the left side. Is one side a little stiff, tight? Is it clunky? Do you feel a little crepitus to it, like a little grindiness to it? If so, then I want to make sure we're going slow and we're working smooth. The next question is it painful? If it's painful, I want to make sure we are keeping it in the 1 to 2 category on a scale of 0 to 10. Slight discomfort, not elevating into pain. As we start getting into it more and you feel it, as long as it's not painful, we can start to allow that shoulder to round up and forward as we internally spiral. Let that shoulder round on one side, and then when we open it back up, I want to feel that shoulder blade downwardly press, moving towards our hip socket as the other side internally spirals in. This will start to create some movement through that shoulder. We'll start to kind of deviate through the spine as we move from one side into the other side. And as we're doing this, the arms can kind of rise up a little bit higher, coming up to shoulder level. And the last little cue I want to add in is, as we're doing this, I'm also actively reaching away towards the walls, seeing how much space can I create fingertip to fingertip as we're spiraling. Imagine this is kind of like we're wringing out the washcloth from fingertip to fingertip through the shoulders into the upper back. We'll shake the arms out, shake the shoulders out. We're going to come back to our starting position, arms at our side, fingers spread, palms spiraled up. Now we're going to do standing cat-cows. We're going to start with just some simple pelvic tilts. Inhale into the belly, into our crocodile breath, filling up sides, low back, and abdominal through the front. Exhale, drawing the navel up and into the spine. As we inhale, allow the pelvis to start to tilt forward, so we get some sway in the low back. On our exhale, as we draw that navel up and in, we're also scooping our tailbone forward. This may, if you have some back tightness, you might feel some tightness, some tension. I want to make sure we're not moving into pain. It should kind of feel good and juicy, not painful. Again, I want to have those hands spiraled up as we're doing this. Now we're going to add in our shoulders, arms and shoulders. So as I inhale, belly's opened up, big sway in the back, palms are spiraled up. As we start to exhale, we're going to shrug and spiral the palms down and let the hands move forward. And then we're going to reach, thumbs down as we scoop. Try to keep your eyes fixated on the point on the wall out in front. Head is not dropping on this. Then we're inhaling and coming back to our starting point by shrugging, spiraling palms up. As the hands come down to the side, we're reaching down, extending the fingers as we lift up through the sternum. Nice inhale to exhale, navel to spine as we scoop. Reach forward. I want to see how much can we get some nice stretch through the upper back and into the lower back at the same time on the cat. As we inhale, opening up, reaching down. I want to see how much can we feel that opening stretch through the top of the chest. And I'm going to add one last little cue. So starting from our inhale point, pelvis is tilted forward, belly is opened up. As we exhale and scoop, I now want to hold that scooped position. I don't want to let that pelvis to go back forward to where we get that sway in the back. I want to keep a little bit of flexion in that low back. And we're going to inhale, shrug, spiral out, reach down, and lift through the sternum, but without letting go of that scooped pelvis. I want to see if you can trying to isolate the more of the thoracic spine with that external rotation of the arms, reaching down. There's a lot more we can do playing with this particular area with the thoracic, but I want to get through the floor routine stuff. I want to consider this more of like an intro to working on that thoracic spine and scapular downward rotation. So now we're going to go ahead and grab our staff. Getting our nice shoulder width grip on the staff. This is where I want to imagine we're bending or breaking the staff in two. And I want that bend to come at the wrist, obviously, but also elbow pit spiraling up towards the ceiling. And that should help get that downward rotation into the shoulder blades. I want to feel that as much as we can actively. We're going to keep the staff in front of our hips to start with, and we're coming back to those pelvic tilts. Nice inhale, letting the pelvis tilt forward. Exhale as we scoop. Inhale, again, nice big sway in the back. Exhale, drawing that navel up and in as we scoop. Should start to kind of feel the glutes tighten up and activate on that scoop a little bit. On the next inhale, as we fill that belly up, on the exhale, as we draw that navel in, we're bringing our arms up, and we're seeing how high can I bring my elbows up to my ears without losing my core, without losing that scooped pelvis. If I lose the scooped pelvis, I'm going to get that rib flare. And I want to try to prevent that rib from flaring out, because that means I'm not getting movement through the thoracic spine. I'm getting it exclusively at the T12L1 junction. So I want to have that good scoop, hold that scoop as we pull elbows up and back. I want to see what is our true range of the shoulders without moving the pelvis. And with each one, as you lift, see if you can squeeze a little bit more range at the very top without losing that pelvic scoop. On the next exhale, as we bring it to the top, we're going to keep it at the top. I want to try to maintain that pelvic scoop through this part as well. And now we're going to exhale as we reach, allowing the shoulder blades to move up to the ceiling, and then inhale as we pull. This is that packed shoulder, so this is downward rotation, depression and downward rotation. I want to keep the elbows actively reaching away throughout this movement. I don't want the elbows to bend. So we're exhale as you reach, inhale as you pull, and try to feel the shoulder blades moving down into the hip sockets as much as possible. We can also work on lifting through the sternum. As we pull the shoulders down, we're breathing into our upper chest. See if you can feel that sternum lifting up. But again, we're not losing that pelvis. On the next exhale, as you push, shoulders are elevating up high. We're going to keep them elevated high. And now we're going to exhale as we draw elbows back. Inhale as we go forward. With the shoulder blades elevated, we should have a little bit more range to move those elbows back. But I am still maintaining that scooped pelvis. I'm not letting that rib cage stick out. I don't want to get into this position where rib is out, big sway in the back with that arm pulling back. We'll go ahead and bring our shoulder staff down. We're going to flip it to the back side of the body. Palms are facing away, back behind us. We're still bending the staff, so elbow pits are still spiraling forward. I want to feel the shoulder blades downwardly rotate, moving towards the hip pockets. We're going to inhale into that crocodile breath, exhale, draw the navel in and scoop. And I want to maintain that scoop as we actively lift elbows up to the ceiling. Inhale, you can let the elbows soften. You can release the scoop a little bit, but as we exhale, I want to actively scoop. Again, I want to feel that rib dropping down as we're lifting elbows up. And as we're getting into this, each one, I'm seeing if I can lift a little higher without forcing it. And I also want to actively bend that staff. I want to feel that spiraling action of like trying to bend or break the staff. Again, I'm bending it away from the body, so I'm trying to break it away to the wall behind, but I want to feel that spiral as I'm lifting and as I'm scooping all at the same time. The cues can get a little difficult to follow, especially if this is new. So this is just something we have to work on, and like practicing it every day, it will slowly get better. We're now going to flip palms so that they're facing forward. We're still bending the staff away from the body. And everything else is going to be the same as what we just did. Nice inhale into the belly. Exhale, scoop actively as we lift, and actively try to break that staff away from the body while you're lifting. Now, because we have this active scoop in the pelvis, core should be somewhat engaged. As I'm lifting up behind with that spiral, see if you can also lift just from the sternum. It's like you're trying to reach up to the ceiling. I don't want to reach forward. If I reach forward, I'm more likely to stick out my rib. So I want to lift those elbows and feel that upward lift of the sternum. It's not going to move very far. It really might not move at all. It's an action of intention. You'll feel it lift as a kind of a stretch and spread across the chest, even if it's not moving very far. We'll go ahead and set the staff off to the side. We're now going to come down to the floor, getting into our quadruped position. Spreading fingers nice and wide, grounding palms and extending the elbows actively. Feet are tucked. I want the big toe tucked underneath. We're going to start with some just light foot mobility and then wrist mobility. So I'm coming back to our crocodile breath, filling up that abdominal wall on the inhale. Exhale, drawing that navel into the spine. We're actually going to start with pelvic tilts. So as we bring that breath into the body, let the pelvis tilt down to the floor. Let that belly open up to the floor. Get a nice big sway in your low back. Exhale, we're drawing that navel up and into the spine as we actively scoop. See if you feel some of that nice stretch through the low back. Again, I want to make sure we're not moving into pain or pinch in that low back. If it's tight, then we can move into the stretchy nature of that tension, seeing if it will loosen up and give us a little bit more range of motion. On the next inhale, as you exhale, we're going to start to do some big toe mobility. So inhale, we'll lightly rock forward. Exhale, we're going to let our hips sink to our heels. And I want to feel the weight of those hips load specifically into the big toe joint and a little bit into the arch of the foot. Inhale is going to bring us back forward. Exhale, feeling that sink hips to the heels. As you're doing this, notice the difference of the right big toe compared to the left big toe. Is one side a little stiffer, a little tighter, a little achier? Do you have less mobility on one side? After about 5 to 10 breaths, we're going to turn our heels out and away, and we're going to get tucked underneath all the way out to the pinky toes. Everything else will be the same. Nice inhale as we rock forward. Exhale as we feel the weight of the hips sink to the heels, loading into those the other 5 toes all the way out to the pinky toe. Inhale coming forward. Exhale softening into it. How does this feel on the left side compared to the right side? Again, it's one side tighter, stiffer, especially through the lateral arch of the foot. That's going to be important, especially when it comes to our gait mechanics. We'll come back up to our starting position, and now we're going to focus a little bit on the wrists. It's primarily going to be working on those elbow spirals, or rotating arms inward and external and inward rotation of the elbows. So fingers are spread wide, grounded palms, actively extended elbows. And we're going to focus on the elbow pits first. I want to turn those elbow pits as far forward as I can, and then I want to internally spiral them back towards the feet as far as I can. And as we go back and forth, as we spiral elbows in forward, I want to inhale. As we spiral them back towards the feet, we're exhaling. And I want to start to pay attention to our shoulder blades as we're spinning those elbows. As the elbow pits spin internal, reaching towards the feet, notice how the shoulder blades kind of want to upwardly rotate. They want to move up and round over the top of the shoulders a little bit. As we spiral those elbow pits forward, the shoulder blades should kind of want to downwardly rotate, moving into that packed shoulder position. So I want to accentuate that. As we internally spiral, allow those shoulder blades to move up towards your ears, we can even push into the floor so we get a little bit of that upper back rounding. And then as we externally spiral, elbow pits moving forward, feel the sternum open up towards the floor. We're basically doing like little scapular presses. As I'm spiraling elbow out, I'm reaching my chest and sternum down to the floor. As I'm spiraling in, I'm pushing and feeling that my upper spine moving up towards the ceiling. Now I want to bring in our pelvis to this as well. So as we exhale, push, we're also drawing our navel in and scooping so that we get this nice kind of cat position, feeling some stretch from low back all the way up to the shoulders. And as we're inhaling, spiraling elbows forward, pelvis tilts down, belly will open up a little bit to the floor, and we get a little bit of sway in the back. Good. So now, next we're going to bring our hands forward. This is where I want to have nice downward pressure pushing into the floor. Fingers are spread wide as possible. Elbows are actively extended. We're going to start with our pelvic tilts in this position. So I'm a little bit extended out. Breathing into the belly. Let that belly open up to the floor. Pelvis will tilt down so that we get some sway in that low back. Exhale. As we scoop, feel that stretch in the low back. Again, I want to make sure we're avoiding any kind of pinch or pain. Shoulders and low back. I do not want to be experiencing pain in this position. But I do, this should feel good and juicy. And on the next inhale, real quick, now we're going to work on that rib flare again. So on the next inhale, as we fill up, rib cage is going to flare because our pelvis is tilting forward. As we exhale, I want to scoop and I want to feel that rib draw in, and we're going to drop our chest into the floor, but I want to make sure that as we reach to the floor, we're not letting that rib cage stick back out again. So, fingers are spread, elbows are actively extended, we're pushing active into the floor lightly. Nice inhale, belly opens up. As we exhale, scoop, feel your core engage, and then reach the sternum to the floor while you continue to actively scoop the pelvis. Inhale, we're going to come out of that position. Exhale, we're going right back into it. And with each one, I want to see if I can drop a little bit lower from my upper chest without losing my pelvis and that rib being drawn together. Notice if it feels tighter on right side compared to left side. Hopefully as you do a few reps, you're able to get a little bit lower. On the next exhale, as we're reaching to the floor, we're going to stay in light tension, drawn down. I'm still keeping that pelvis scooped. I'm keeping that rib in as much as possible. We're now going to push through the floor, through our hands, which is going to slide our hips back so that the shoulders move up to our ears. And then we're going to pull. And I want to feel the shoulder blades draw down like they're packing down and back towards the hips. But I don't want to lose our pelvis or our rib. Exhale as you push. Inhale as you pull. And I'm going to add a little bit of head movement on this. So as you push, your head can drop to the floor lightly. As you pull on your inhale, let your eyes look up and try to look up along the line of the floor to see like you're looking to the end of the floor, to the wall in front. Exhale, head gets to drop. Inhale, eyes are lightly looking up. And we'll come off the shoulders. Shake them out a little bit. Give them a little bit of and we're going to change into our inverted position. So inverted, starting out, legs are light or in front, knees bent. Hands are coming down to hips, slightly behind hips. The closer you can keep your hands through the hips, underneath the shoulder, the better. But some of us have longer torsos than we have arms, and so we may need to lean back a little bit. Some of us have longer arms than torsos. So we're going to find the best position we can, reaching to the floor. Important thing here is I want the palms grounded. I don't want to be on fingertips or on knuckles. I want to be reaching through the palms. We're going to start out with those same arm spirals that we've done already in a few different positions. So, inhale as the elbow pits spiral out. Exhale as the elbow pits spiral in. And you might notice right off the bat that depending on the direction that you're spiraling, if I externally spiral, those shoulder blades want to move back, down and back. If I spiral internally, they want to round forward. So we're going to allow that to happen. And we're going to bring in our pelvic tilt on this as well. So as I exhale, elbows spiraling in, I'm also drawing my navel to spine and scooping. Again, I want to keep my eyes fixed on a point on the wall in front. So I don't want my head moving up and down a whole lot. Kind of keep focused on that point on the wall. So from exhale, we're inhaling as we spiral elbows out and away. And I want to feel that nice lift and open, tall chest. As we're inhaling, right now, the pelvis is allowed to move forward. But on our next exhale, I want to keep that pelvis scooped. So as we exhale, round, keep that pelvis rounded and scooped. As we move into our inhale, we're exclusively moving into the upper chest, shoulder. So I'm spiraling elbows out, lifting through the sternum, but I'm still staying scooped. Nice inhale, let that inhale breath move up into the upper chest. Exhale, we're rounding, seeing if we can scooping a little bit more actively. Inhale, spiral out as we only lift up through the sternum. See how much you can feel that sternum moving straight up to the ceiling. I don't want it to move forward or even diagonal. I want to go straight up, keeping that pelvis scooped. The more we're able to keep that pelvis scooped, we're going to keep the lumbar spine from extending, which means we're not going to get that as much massive extension at the T12L1, and we're trying to get more segmental extension through T1 through T12. Each of these individual vertebrae, I want to get them to move up to the ceiling as we spiral. Feel this downward pressure through the palms as you externally spiral and lift. Good. On the next inhale, as we exhale, getting tall, we're going to stay tall. And we can go ahead and cross our legs. I'm no longer holding that pelvic scoop, but I am externally spiraled and feeling those shoulder blades packing down and back. Now we're going to do a little bit of light neck mobility, starting with just checking our blind spots. Slow exhale as we look over our right shoulder. Inhale as we come back to center. Slow exhale as we look over our left shoulder. Inhale back to center. As you're going side to side, notice if one side feels tighter, more restricted than the other side. And I really kind of want to reach through my chin. So as I'm turning, I want to avoid reaching from my forehead. If you look, I'm turning, my forehead is moving, my head is actually tilting. I'm no longer nice and tall. I have a tilt because I'm reaching more from my forehead. If I reach from my chin, and I'm seeing how much far can I get that chin to go to align with into my shoulder or beyond, I'm able to keep that nice tall spine a little bit better. That ought to get some, by adding in reaching through the chin, that should bring some of that mobility stretch a little lower down on the cervical spine. Next, we're going to get into our light tilt and lift. So very lightly tilting left ear towards the left shoulder. This is not a major drop. I'm not trying to touch. Barely dropping. Opposite ear is lifting actively like I'm trying to touch the ceiling, or like I got a piece of string pulling it up. At the same time, I'm also downwardly pressing through that shoulder with that elbow actively spiraling out and away. Inhale as we come back to center. Exhale as we lightly tilt and lift to the other side. So I'm going to go through that again a little bit. So as I exhale, I'm lifting through the ear. I'm downwardly pressing through the palm. I'm also actively externally spiraling the elbow so that I feel that shoulder blade packing down more on that side. Inhale, I bring it back to center. Exhale, actively spiral that elbow, pressing through the palm as I lift that ear. Again, notice if this is different on the left side compared to the right side. And then the last thing we'll do is some shallow neck rolls. So shallow neck rolls, I want to keep this shallow, not deep. We're going to drop the chin lightly towards the chest. We're going to move our right ear towards our right shoulder. Then we'll let our eyes move up to the ceiling. And then the left ear moves to the left shoulder. And then the chin moves back down to the floor or to chest. And we're going to keep those 4 points, moving through those 4 points, and slowly start to smooth those 4 points out into a circle. Now, as you're getting into this lightly, we can start to allow it to deepen, but I don't want to force it. I want to make sure that it is not painful. Nice slow inhales through the nose. Nice exhale out through the mouth. Once we get 5 or 10 reps in one direction, we're going to come back to our starting point and we're going to do that again, and we're starting shallow again. Chin to chest, lightly letting the left ear move to the left shoulder, eyes up to the ceiling, right ear to the right shoulder, and then chin back down to the chest, and then slowly deepening into it, smoothing out those 4 points into more of a circle. This one's an important one to notice. How does it feel moving in one direction compared to the other? And where exactly are you feeling it? Is it more pronounced in one side of the neck than the other side? All right, now we're going to get into our shin box. So you can't work all that shoulder stuff and not get into the hips. If the hips stay tight, they're just going to pull the shoulders right into tension. So left side shin box, my left palm is down. I want to have that palm grounded into the floor. Elbow is actively spiraled out and away so that we feel packed shoulder, tall sternum. Weight is slightly shifted over onto my left hip so that the right hip is off the floor. I want to have nice space over here. We're going to take our nice inhales into our crocodile breath. But I also want to feel that crocodile, that breath moving down into the pelvic bowl, specifically the pelvic bowl of that back hip. As it fills up that back hip, it makes it heavy and it reaches it to the floor, but it's reaching it to the floor without me shifting my weight. My shoulders and my weight are still over my front hip. As it inhales into that back hip, exhale that I'm lifting that hip, reaching that hip bone forward and actively scooping. All those pelvic scoops we worked on, same thing. Nice scoop. See if you feel that stretch through the front of the hip. Inhale into the weight of that breath into that bowl. Feel that bowl move the hip to the floor. Exhale, lift, scoop actively. See if you feel that stretch. The more active you are reaching that hip forward and scooping, you should start to feel some glute contraction. If you're not feeling some glute contraction, it means that you still have hip flexion. You're not actually getting that hip into an extended position. Hip extension will mean glute contraction by definition. After 5 nice breaths in and out, we're going to relax that hip. We're going to stay on this side. We're going to get into our hip openers. So now I'm lifting that back knee on my exhale. So nice inhale. We can still fill up that bowl, let it drop. But then on our exhale, as it's lifting a little bit, we're not worried about the scoop. We're opening up that knee, lifting it up to the ceiling. Inhale, letting it back down to the floor. As we fill up that pelvic bowl, exhale. Nice lift through that knee. Again, I don't want to shift my weight back and forth. I want to keep that weight more on my opposite hip so that I have the freedom to kind of move this back hip. With each one, I'm seeing if I can open it up a little bit more without going into pain, without forcing it. Once we get 5, we're now going to slowly shin box all the way across to the other side. Palm grounded to the floor. Elbow spiraled out. Shoulders packed. Tall spine. Weight is shifted more over onto my right hip now so that the left hip is free. Inhale. Letting the weight of that breath move into that bowl of the pelvis, reaching it to the floor without shifting our weight on it. Exhale as that hip lifts, scoops actively, moving into that light stretch on the front of the hip. Notice how does it feel on this side compared to how it felt on the other side. Is it tighter, more restricted? Is it harder to get that hip to move forward and to extend? Is it a bigger stretch? If you're able to get into it, do you get as much glute contraction or is that less? After 5, we'll continue to inhale, filling up that bowl, but now on our exhale, we're lifting that back knee up towards the ceiling. Inhale, letting it back down. Notice how much mobility do you have in this movement. Are you able to lift that back hip as much? My left hip is generally my tighter hip, so both of these movements are tighter, and I don't get as much elevation in my knee. Although, with all the shoulder work that we did, this is the best this hip is moved as a first movement of the day for doing this. I actually have pretty good mobility. So there was something about all the work we did in the shoulders that helped to unlock the hips. That's probably an important thing to take note of. Once we get 5 on each side, we're going to move back to the other side. And we're going to start with that last one, the first one. Inhale into that bowl of the pelvis. Exhale as we actively scoop, getting that glute to be active. And we'll want to lock in that back hip. And now our free hand, we're going to reach and rotate. So back hip is actively scooped. We're going to reach through the knee. So I want my hand to move through that knee. As I reach, I'm spreading hands, spiraling my palm up to the ceiling and extending the elbow actively. And I'm seeing how far can I get my fingertips to go without leaning forward. Inhale, brings it all the way back in, filling up that back bowl of the pelvis, allowing it to weight down to the floor. Exhale, lifts it up, scoops, locking it in, continuing to exhale as we reach, spiral, and extend. Notice how does this feel as we move into more of our lumbar and thoracic spine. So lumbar spine being low back, thoracic being up around the shoulders. After 5 on that side, we'll slowly transition back to the other side, doing the exact same thing. Grounded palm, spiraled out elbow, packed shoulder. Inhale into that back hip bowl. Exhale as it lifts, scoops, locking it in. Reaching through that knee. Fingers are spread wide. Extend the elbow. As you finish exhaling, inhale, bringing it all the way back into that back pelvic bowl. Exhale, lift, scoop, spiral, and extend. Oh, that one felt good. All right, we're going to flip back over to the other side. Palm is grounded, elbow is spiraled out, packed shoulder, tall spine. We're still shifted forward. And we're now going to work on that same packed shoulder idea. And we're going to do so by just playing with those arm spirals on one side. So exhale, we're going to allow that elbow to turn in and let the shoulder round. As that shoulder rounds, now our palm's not going to move on the floor. So we're not going to get a ton of movement on that elbow moving in. But we can allow that shoulder to round by kind of letting the spine soften. I'm changing my position. So I can soften and allow that spine to kind of side bend to the floor. And then we're going to inhale as we spiral back out, feeling that the scapula or shoulder blade packed down and back, and we're lifting up through that sternum. And that's our inhale. So inhale as we're getting tall, exhale as we're spiraling in. Exhale as we're spiraling in. Inhale as we're spiraling out and getting tall. And I want to feel the weight, most of my weight, since we're shifted over onto that that side hip, I really want to feel a good amount of weight through the shoulder, through that palm. So it's almost like we're trying to, our arm is a screwdriver and our hand is the end of a screw. So as we exhale, allowing it to spiral in, it's unscrewing. And as we inhale, getting tall, lifting up through the sternum, it's screwing down, it's tightening. You'll feel that tightening at the shoulder blade, on the rib cage, as well as through that pressure through the floor, like it's driving down, because that driving down is getting the spine nice and tall. Exhale, we're untightening and everything's loosening up. See how much can you feel the action from the palm and the shoulder blade. I want to feel that shoulder blade actively packing down as we lift up. The more active you can feel it at the palm and the shoulder blade, the better. And we'll go ahead and flip over to the other side, and we're going to do the same thing. Grounded palm, externally spiraled out shoulder, tall spine to start with. As we exhale, we're letting that elbow pits turn in. It's rounding the shoulder, softening the spine. Everything is getting loose. Then we're inhaling as we externally spiral, and this makes everything tight and tall. Gives us that nice lift, like we're driving down through that palm. It's almost like we're, almost feel like a rocket ship trying to lift off into space as we externally spiral. Inhale, everything softens back down to the floor. Inhale, getting nice and tall. Again, I want to see how much can we feel that shoulder blade on the exhale, rounding up, and on the inhale, actively sliding down, packing down to help lift up the sternum taller. All right, so now last thing we're going to do is getting into our fold. So we'll come back to our starting side, and we're just going to get into nice, light, easy folds, and I want to go back and forth. And we're going to do a good 10 to 20 reps on each side. So with my folds, I want to start with that same breath. Inhale breath, filling up that back bowl, allowing that bowl to kind of reach to the floor. Exhale, it's coming up and actively scooping, and then we're getting in a nice fold. Now, where the direction of that fold is, I want you to be more exploratory. So, I can reach straight with my shoulders and my hands straight through my shin. I can turn and have shoulders and hands reaching through the arrow of my knee. I can go behind my knee. I can also go opposite and reach against the grain. So all of those are welcome and allowed, as long as we're not forcing it and we're not moving into pain. But I do want to notice areas of tightness and tension, which is part of the reason I want to be more exploratory in nature. So as we get our nice exhale, reach, fold, inhale brings us all the way back up. We're then going to transition across to the other side. And whatever you explore on one side, we're doing the same level of exploration on the other. Nice exhale as the hands reach forward. Inhale as we come back to center. Transition to the other side. A couple things I want to watch out for here is as I fold, I don't want to drop my head straight down to the floor. I don't want to reach down. I want to keep my spine nice and tall and let the hands slide forward. As I'm sliding my hands forward, I can also feel my tailbone reaching back towards the floor behind. So I'm reaching in two counter directions. One through the fingertips, and one is through my hips, through my tailbone, reaching back. Inhale brings it all the way back up. Nice, take a nice inhale, exhale, or exhale to inhale as we transition. So we're ready to exhale once we get to the other side. Now, as we're going back and forth, notice what is different on the right side compared to the left side. Is one side tighter, more restricted? Where is it tighter and more restricted? Again, reaching through the fingertips, reaching away through the tailbone. Once we've done 3 to 5 reps, we're going to start to open up that back leg a little bit, continuing to get into our reach. Inhale, let that leg slide up. When we transition to the other side, I want to put that back leg in the same position. This is allowing us to get a little bit different mobility into that back hip as we get into our fold. And with each one, we can continue to kind of open up that back leg a little bit more until we get closer and closer to what we would consider a yoga class pigeon pose, that full end range pose, more like this. But I don't want to work on, I'm not as concerned about the end range pose, I'm more concerned about how we move into it. How it feels and all the spaces in between. Again, nice and slow, back and forth. This is one of my favorite little simple flows for getting the hips opened up, real nice and mobile, and prepared for our day. We'll do 1 or 2 more side to side, really getting into that nice end range without forcing it, without going into pain. How does that feel on the left side compared to the right side? Again, any differences side to side are worth taking note on and are very, very useful when it comes to consultations, as far as especially if there's pain in the body. We're going to come back, we're going to finish with laying on our back. Knees bent, feet flat on the floor. Letting our hands soften down, palms are up. Want to feel the shoulders soften and relax down to the floor. I want to try to avoid having those shoulders rounded up. So that's part of the reason I want those palms up, is they allow those shoulders to open up. And we're going to get some nice breaths starting out in that crocodile breath, breathing into the abdominal belly, not just forward into the belly, but also out through the sides and into that low back space. Really, I want to kind of feel that inhale. You should feel the low back expand and spread onto the floor on your inhale. Exhale, navel can come into the spine. Drawing all of that air out. Low back should kind of stay drawn down to the floor, but you're feeling that wall shrink. And then on the inhale, nice big expansion. Imagine that abdominal wall is a balloon and you're trying to get it to expand a little bit wider on each inhale. As you're feeling that expansion of the abdominal wall, next I want to bring that breath up into the ribs. We're still allowing that inhale and exhale expansion of the abdominals, but I want to get the same sensation with the ribs. Feeling that breath not just moving forward into the chest, but into the upper back and out through the side. So in the same way that our inhale breath expanded our abdominal wall and felt that low back kind of expand and spread into the floor, I want to feel that same sensation with our ribs. Can you feel that expansion? Everything moving out in all directions like you're inflating a balloon. And then exhale, navel into spine as we expel as much of that air as possible. And then next inhale, feeling that lift, expansion through the ribs. And then the last cue will be inhale into tension. Notice where that tension is at, whether it's in the abdominal wall, whether it's in the rib cage, up in the neck and shoulders, or down into the pelvic floor. Wherever you feel that tension, breathe into that tension lightly, not forcefully. And then on the exhale, allow all that tension to rinse off and melt onto the floor. I want to actively breathe into tension and then actively let that tension go. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. And I want you to very slowly come up to a sitting position. Check in before you stand up to make sure that you're not dizzy or lightheaded.